Hey guys, so I'm here with a video that's going to kind of do double duty. I'm going to do a Friday Reads first, a standard Friday Reads, and then after that I'm going to do a bit of some roll call of people in the Shakespeare read-along and sort of inaugurate the Shakespeare read-along with a little talk about Harold Bloom's book. But anyway, to start with what I have finished reading this week, I read the 3 books I have about the Golem, the Legend of the Golem, and all very short, all very easy reading, so I kind of thought I might do a video about just the Legend of the Golem, but the Golem was this creature. It's a Jewish legend from Prague that this great rabbi, brought this golem to life after he got a dream about it, and the golem's purpose was to protect the Jews of Prague against basically at the time it was anti-Semitism that was common among Europe. It's from the Middle Ages. I think I'm gonna talk more about that in the video, but then there's a second story that kind of comes later, anyway, there's a later story, and I will talk about it in that video, but, I liked those. They're maybe not always the best edited books, and that might be the fault of the translators, but I could definitely see giving them to youngsters who are just getting into reading. They're really fun, really interesting, fun stories that a young person might like, that might get them into reading. But I mean, I would recommend them to adults too. They're just fun. Yeah. So the other book I finished was Closely Watched Trains by Bohumil Hrabal, and this is a novel about a 22-year-old guy who is working as an apprentice of a train station runner, guy who runs a train station basically, and he's this man's apprentice, and it's in the last days of World War II, so when it's obvious that the Germans are losing, and this man named Milosh feels he has a lot of anxiety about his quote-unquote manliness, and I think the whole novel kind of turns into a bit of a commentary on this idea of manliness and what things men were or still are often taught to use to evaluate themselves. One of the big ones in this novel is sex, because anyway, I've recorded a whole video about that book. I recorded the video right after I finished it, so I closed the book after reading the last page and recorded the video, and I don't usually feel that compelled to make a video. I usually like to wait a couple days to let my thoughts simmer, but in that case, I just wanted to get right to talking about it. I did really end up liking it, and liking that sort of commentary on manliness, because it's always been a concept that's bugged me as a man who is kind of effeminate, if that hasn't come off much. But anyway, earlier this week I said I would start to read Dr. Faustus, and I did read the introduction. That's where I got to, but I don't know, I didn't feel compelled to continue for some reason. I just wasn't feeling it, and I'm very much a mood reader, so I didn't feel like forcing myself to continue with it. So I know I will read that eventually. It's not that I won't read it, just for now it is I don't know, after talking about it in this video I might end up reading it anyway, but and in any case, another book that I have been reading, I'm about halfway through it, is Disturbing the Peace, which the cover says is by Václav Havel, but it's an interview that Václav Havel did with a Czech journalist named Karel Hvíždala. They sort of did the interview via correspondence, because I think Hvíždala was living in East Germany or West Germany, but they couldn't meet face to face, and so they Vizsla would send Václav Havel questions in the mail, and Václav Havel would actually record his answers. So he would still speak them, but he would be recording them. So I thought it was an interesting way of doing an interview. And then Havel would send his responses, and then Vizsla would listen to those and send follow-up questions sometimes. So it was interesting to hear about that interview process. But it covers a wide range of topics. Some about Havel's life, his early life, how he became a playwright, how he became a dissident, but also just about his ideas about a lot of different things, about capitalism and communism, about art, about writing, about politics. So yeah, I'm really liking it. His intelligence really definitely comes through. He was very much someone who didn't like to make absolute assertions, I think, and that's something I really appreciate and that I really relate to, because I have trouble making absolute assertions, because I'm always like, well, there's always probably some counter-argument. So, yeah, I really like that, and I'm liking that so far, about halfway through it. But anyway, lastly, I want to talk about this. It's Love and Garbage by Ivan Klima. And I think I'm going to start reading this, if not today, then very soon, because I actually got an email from Municorn at the Bookish Land about participating in a collaboration for Banned Books Week, which is in September at some point. And I'm thinking of either talking about the plays of Václav Havel, which were banned in Czechoslovakia, about... I just dropped it. Bohumil Hrabal's novel, which was also banned, or this one after I read it. I'll have to see what I think after I read this. But this one seems to me like it would be a really good book to talk about, because it was banned immediately upon its publication, whereas Havel's and Hrabal's work were sort of accepted for a while and then banned, but this one was just never, it wasn't even, I don't think, published in Czechoslovakia until the Velvet Revolution, when the Republic was established. But yeah, so I'm gonna start reading this soon. It sounds really interesting. Sort of one of those weird novels, I guess, one of those weird kind of absurdist novels. But yeah, I'm eager to start that. And then, the second part of this video is about the Shakespeare read-along, which begins this week with The Taming of the Shrew. Shout out to Michael S. Deutsch, who appears to have changed his channel name to Michael SD. But shout out to Michael for reminding me that this was beginning, because I almost forgot. And then he commented on a video the other day and was like, oh yeah, I just bought a copy of The Taming of the Shrew for the read-along. And I was like, oh wait, that starts next week. And so, yeah, so his reminder got me going. So I read a little bit of that. This is from the Folger Shakespeare Library. And I'm liking this edition. It has little summaries before every scene in the play, which means that I can really just kind of read it and enjoy the language and think about what's happening more than trying to figure out what's happening, because Shakespeare, as I think anyone who's read him in school knows, it can be difficult to follow sometimes because of the high poetic, how dramatic he is with the poetry. I mean, whatever. You know what I mean, probably, if you've read any Shakespeare. And also it has on the opposite side of, so there's here where's the actual text of the play, and then over here, or no, reverse that. This is the text of the play. This over here is kind of clarifying some archaic words, or if it may be unclear, if the meaning may be unclear because of the rich language, it clarifies things, so that's also very nice. So I recommend these editions if you can find them. I wish I had these editions for every single play that we're reading, but alas, I do not. But I also today began reading Harold Bloom's book, Shakespeare, The Invention of the Human. It's a nice fat thing. My plan is not to read the whole thing. I'm going to read the sections about the plays that we're reading. So, The Taming of the Shrew, The Taming of the Shrew is not the first play in here, but it's the one I'm going to begin reading. And the reason for that is because I've done a bit of skimming around those sections with the plays, and really, I think you can read each chapter individually. He just kind of goes through them in the order they were published, so... But I did read the introductory sections and the concluding sections, so they're sort of there's sort of a forward type of thing, and then there's an introductory section, and then there is what he calls a coda at the end, and then another essay at the back, which he calls foregrounding, which he says in the beginning of the book that it can be read at any time and doesn't require having read any of the book to understand. And so throughout these essays that aren't specifically about any play, first of all, he puts forth his main thesis of the book, which is that Shakespeare sort of created the modern human before the modern human had really come about. Like, Bloom believes that if you look at Shakespeare, you see a lot of the same ways that we think about being human today before that had come about. And, you know, in those introductions, he can't make too much of a detailed argument about that. But it's definitely a provocative thesis. It'll be interesting to see in the specific plays whether he can sustain that. But other things he talked about are I found pretty interesting, and it's that and definitely connect back to that thesis. Like, he talks about the sort of nihilism of Shakespeare. Not necessarily nihilism, because he also talks about how Shakespeare doesn't necessarily adhere to any one view of the world. How you can look through his plays and, you know, some of them you might say, well, he seems like he's pro-Catholic, but in other ones you say he's pro-Protestant. But, like, there's no one... You can't pin down Shakespeare. There's no one interpretation of him. I thought in the foregrounding section, the last essay, he talks specifically about the characters of Hamlet and Falstaff, and how they are both sort of, in his view, manifestations of people who have kind of been awakened, I guess, to the meaninglessness of the universe, and two different responses to that. So, for Hamlet famously can't decide on anything, and Bloom argues that is because he's realized his own insignificance and the meaninglessness of it all, so he just thinks, what's the point of making a decision when nothing is going to have any impact anyway? Whereas Falstaff is all about kind of accepting the meaninglessness and insignificance of it all, but kind of making fun of that, making fun of himself, making fun of everyone else, and just, you know, enjoying life anyway. I guess. Or, yeah. Not sure I put that well, but, yeah, these are some interesting essays. Sometimes I feel like I found this while reading Harold Bloom's anthology of poems, where in his introductions, at times his writing can be sort of full of nebulous or ambiguous concepts, to the point where some of the things he says seem kind of meaningless almost in that sense. So that can bug me. But overall, his writing is great, obviously, but that's just one little quibble that I come across sometimes so far with Harold. I haven't read that much Harold Bloom, so it's not really fair of me to assess his writing yet. I want to read more Harold Bloom, but anyway, I am going to start to read the section in this book on the Taming of the Shrew. I'm going to continue reading Taming of the Shrew. I'm going to keep reading Václav Havel, and I think I may begin to read Love and Garbage. So yeah, and one more thing, sorry. This is, I have a final kind of list of people who've said that they're participating in the read-along. I just wanted to make sure I have everyone so I can go watch your videos. So I have some people who said that they're definitely doing it, and a couple that have said maybe. So the ones that I have down for certain, of course, Curtis Books and Films, who, to be honest, is more like the co-host of this than just a participant, because it was sort of his idea. Because when I first suggested it, I didn't necessarily mean it as a buddy read, but then he was just like, oh yeah, I'll do it. And then I was like, okay, sure, why not? Cat just knocked something down. Anyway, Curtis, Fariba at the Medieval Reader, Sarah Marcel, Biblioatlas, Patrice Jones, who doesn't make videos but is a commenter, comments quite a bit. Lillian Neiswender, who also comments quite a bit but is not a maker of videos. Tales of Adventure, Michael S. Deutsch, or Michael S.D., Steve Donahue, of course, who I'm guessing will probably read each of these plays in like the 10 minutes before he records the videos where he talks about them, knowing his reading speed, and the fact that he's probably read all these like 100 times. Richardson reads, and then The Bookish Land said that she might try to participate, and then Anna Azia, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, said she might participate for a few of the plays. And then Jer, or Yer, I'm not sure how your name is said, but is another non-video maker but commenter who said that he might, or she might, do it. So yeah, that's who I have. If you are participating and I didn't mention you, feel free to leave a snarky comment. If I did mention you as someone who's participating but you're not participating, also feel free to leave a snarky comment. So thank you. I'm sorry this was a very long video, but yeah, thanks guys. Bye.